yeah, I mean,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, I was getting a bunch of static on this line here, and I didn't know if we still had a connection. But
No,
okay, so
uh,
after Oklahoma City in April of 1995, these records were stored in the Murrah building. The building was detonated. So on September 19th of 1996, congressional hearings were still ongoing about the Gulf War syndrome and all the medical problems. And in that hearing, I have a copy of this in the appendix of the book. The DOD, the Department of Defense, admitted at the hearings that over 400,000 of the Gulf War syndrome records had, quote, disappeared. And so the Pentagon was off the hook of a potentially hundreds of billions or even trillions of dollars in future long-term intergenerational medical costs. Our soldiers were sick. They'd come home, get their wife sick, then the wife would get the children born were being sick, then the grandchildren, the they didn't know. This had never been done before. So the whole thing was washed away because the records to prove all of this were gone. And Ole knows, Ole, tell them what happened at the Murrah building when those two bombs didn't explode.
well,
Well, the thing,
now,
there,
sorry.
it wasn't only papers from that, but also there was a lot of papers around the Clintons from the White River and these type of things that was transferred to the Alfred P. Murrah building before the explosion. And then after the first explosion happened, just when people were coming running from everywhere trying to save people that were injured in the gravel and ruins of this building, suddenly somebody shouted out secondary bombs, leave the area, clear the area, and so on. So everybody had to leaving these poor people there dying in the gravel. And then what people observed was that there were a couple of vans coming in, people in blue overalls that went straight into the building. They knew what they were looking for, and then coming out with big file cabinets and stuff like that with the Clinton material in the vans, and then took off. And then people were allowed back and tried to save whoever was still alive.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if I could chime in here, this goes, Cody, to the question that I asked you about the connection as a false flag operation, because you just really provided a tremendous parallel there. I was also a judge at the 9/11 War Crimes Tribunal with my fellow judge, Connie Fogel, who's a tremendous human rights lawyer. And we had over 20 witnesses led by Professor James Fetzer, who's a former Marine and who's a professor emeritus at the University of Wisconsin, who led a contingent of 20 expert witnesses in the 9/11 area. Well, they set up, part of the false flag was to simulate, and as a total simulation, that one of the, quote, airplanes, they simulated, although it did not occur, an airliner crashing into the Pentagon, an event that did not occur. The FBI came and took all the ground cameras away. And in fact, what occurred was that there were explosives planted inside a particular area of the Pentagon that blew up. And that area of the Pentagon was the analog to what was contained in the Alfred P. Murrah building. And the analog there was, that was the evidence that was being gathered to the mysterious disappearance of $3 trillion plus, which had gone into the black ops of the secret space program that Donald Rumsfeld had been in charge of. That included the Quantum Access secret time travel program. And I know that because I've interviewed, that I know that it's correct, because I've interviewed 8 to 10 whistleblowers from the DARPA CIA secret time travel, quantum access, secret teleportation and time travel program. I myself was interviewed by up to 50 DARPA and CIA officials from the time travel program as part of my duties in 1971 when I was general counsel of the New York City EPA, because they had time traveled my 2005 book, Exopolitics, back to 1971. And they've had me under time travel surveillance ever since then. And that's, I call it the chronogarchy. They're the secret time travel government. And we have eyewitnesses that all of the time travel pre-identified presidents of the chronogarchy, which is Bush 1, Bush 2, Clinton, and Obama, and Trump, have been secretly identified by DARPA CIA time travel in 1971, and then had been brought in, had been informed secretly of their destiny as a future U.S. president, and then had been groomed for the office, so that by the time they got into the office, that's why you have a consistency of policy. They either run from the left or the right, but the policy remains the same, and it's the CIA that's in charge of that. And that's why, through, it's fairly seamless. The only kind of wild card seems to be Trump, but that remains to be seen.
Alfred?
Yeah.
I know that Cody needs to leave in a few minutes here.
I'm sorry.
Could I just ask a quick question? Cody, the reason why there was a daycare center, with children killed and so on, normally that is to get the emotional reaction, women and children. Did they need that emotional massive impact to get a distraction away from how the real truth behind that, since this is so mind-blowing? Do you think that is why they involved a daycare center as well?
Well, my understanding was that during a standard PSYOP, if you're going to use a bombing, you're going to have to cover it up somehow, and that's what the Timothy McVeigh Ryder truck thing was. That was a cover for that op. But the unexploded bomb that was in the daycare center, that would be used to cause as many civilian children casualties as possible, because in the PSYOP part of a bombing like this, you would, of course, want children, civilian casualties, so that you could put it out on the news. This is how these people think. They're horribly satanic. And that would increase the emotional turmoil and emotional pull on the civilian population in the area. And so what happened, this is quite interesting, back when Sirhan Sirhan was charged with the assassination of Robert Kennedy, Dr. Julian West, he was one of the MK Ultra doctors, he was involved in those interviews. And fast forward now, just like you said, Ole, all these same players keep showing up. Fast forward into the Murrah City bombing, just after the bombing went off, none other than Dr. Julian West, the old CIA guy, was sent down there to Oklahoma to assess the emotional and psychological damage of this event. Now, here we have a mind control MK Ultra doctor involved with Robert Kennedy assassination and also the Murrah building. Here it all is again, same players, same thing. Yes, to answer your question, that was a PSYOP. They probably ordered the guys that put those, the guys that took the job to bomb the Murrah building. I turned it down. If I'd have took it, those bombs wouldn't have misfired. Whoever did that, there was some kind of unprofessional stuff there. But they were ordered, I'm sure, as part of a bigger PSYOP program to put those bombs directly in the daycare. They wanted civilian children. The more the merrier. This is how these guys think.
Is there anything you would like to say to the families of the people that lost members of their loved one or their families that day?
Well, I mean, this was a horrific event. There was 168 people killed and about over 680 injured. There were 324 buildings that were damaged over a 16-block radius. 86 cars were burned or destroyed, shattered glass in 258 buildings, and approximately $250 million of damages. All I have to say is I'm a patriot of America. I love my country. I did do black ops, and we were involved in criminal activity, highly illegal activity. You know, if an assassin kills someone with a presidential finding from the CIA, then that's called national security. If you kill someone without that, then it's called murder. So the lines between treason and patriotism are real fine in these areas. But to the people, the civilians in Oklahoma, you know, I couldn't do something like that to our own people. All right, that's why I turned that job down. But to the people down there, I'm sorry. I'm trying now to tell the truth. Is that the little parts of it that I know. I don't know everything because these were compartmentalized black ops. I'm just telling them the things that I know in the highest and best way. And I'm sorry. I'm trying to bring light into a dark world. It's also December 7th, and as Alfred alluded to earlier, there's a lot of strange things with the Pearl Harbor. I got stories in here that what my dad told me. This is amazing stuff about what he thought about Pearl Harbor. His checks were late for the first time. December 7th was a Sunday, 41, and the checks were late. They normally came in on the first of the month, and it was the only time in his 8 years in the Army that the checks didn't come in, and it was really weird. And on the 5th, which was a Friday, the checks finally come in, and the CO, they drew straws, and they were going to have a skeleton crew there left at the, and so everybody was going off for leave, and he thought that was strange. The checks come in on Friday afternoon, just before the attack, and then all the guys are ordered out of there, and he didn't think about it at the time, but he was one of the ones that drawn straws. He stayed there, and he was at Schofield Barracks, and that barracks was machine gunned up by Japanese Zeros, and I've got a bunch of stories about that. But the point it told us is when he was in the Army, he didn't think about all of it. But later on, after all the research and documents about the attack at Pearl Harbor came, he was highly suspicious that they had actually known about that, and that they let it occur as a way to pull on the heartstrings of the American people so that they would be ready to fight Japan. There was a big isolationist movement in America. They didn't want to go into war. And when this event happened, it made everybody mad, and they were ready to go. Same thing with the Murrah building. Clinton had come up with that Anti-Effective Death Penalty Act thing and couldn't get it passed. But after the Murrah building, where everyone was emotional and upset and psyops were reigning, you know, then he finally got the votes in the federal government, the Senate and House, to pass that thing. And so these types of psyops appear just like clockwork in these ops, Ole, and you know a lot more about these correlations, but my goal is to do the research and get all these facts out to people so that we can understand how these shadow government operations are affecting our lives, our history, our country, and hopefully put an end to them. That may be wishful, idealistic thinking, but my intent is to bring the light, stand for the light, and step out of the darkness where I was.
Well, we salute you for that.
Yeah, I really want to second what Bullet just said and offer all my support and my congratulations to you, Cody, and because you're doing a very courageous thing to come forward at this time and really to bring this light forward. And hopefully you will inspire some of the people behind 9/11, because it's the MO and you can almost call it cookie cutter between the Alfred P. Murrah and 9/11. It's so cookie cutter between what they did on 9/11 at the Pentagon and what they did with the Alfred P. Murrah building is amazing, because they got rid of all that treasure trove of 400,000 cases of the Gulf War
syndrome.
Yeah. And in the Pentagon, they went in and they assassinated the young investigators of the U.S. Navy Judge Advocate Corps, all of the Marine Corps and U.S. Navy investigators there, all of their records that they had been compiling for the $3 trillion that had been siphoned off from U.S. domestic and other accounts to finance.
That's amazing. That's amazing stuff, Alfred. And Ole, I'm sorry, I have another interview I have to go to. I apologize, but I'd like to talk some more about this, because this has been interesting stuff. And I'd like to give out my email. I have 2 emails now. And if anyone wants to provide tips or get information or get a book copy, I can give you this information.
Sure. Go
ahead.
Okay. We have one, is my personal email, Cody, CODY, Golden, GOLDEN, ELK, at yahoo.com. That's my Indian name. I'm part Cherokee. It's Cody Golden Elk at yahoo.com. Then we have another one for people that might have some questions or tips or comments, and it's called questions for Cody at gmail.com. So either one of those can get us linked up.
Is that the numeral 4 or written out 4?
That's a great question. 4, F-O-R. Questions for F-O-R, Cody at gmail.com. So I'm sorry I'm so pressed for time, but I'd love to. This was a great interview. Thank you, Alfred, for telling us about that stuff in Little Rock.
Let's do it again.
Okay, well, I have to run. Thank you, guys. I'm sorry. I apologize. Thank you, Ole, and thank you, Alfred, and thank all the listeners. Try to bring the light.
Okay, good enough.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Ole, do you have a couple of minutes just to bounce thoughts here?
Of course.
I'd just like to ask you, with your deep background about false flag operations, what your thoughts are about what Cody said and about the Oklahoma City bombing as a false flag operation. What did we learn here, and how can we use it moving forward from here?
Like I said to start with, there's always a risk with so-called whistleblowers. Are they for real, or are they there to lead us in a wrong direction or feed us with false information and so on? My feeling with Cody, and I've been in touch with him for about a year, is that I trust him. I really trust him. I cannot see any reason why this type of information would be given out there to benefit the darker forces. I mean, this is right in the belly of the beast, right in the heart of all of these dark things. So for me, it's incredible stuff. And I've been doing a whole long series of interviews with him, and he just keeps delivering information in many, many, many different areas. It's like he says, the Alfred P. Murrah building, that's just scratches on the surface. That was not the big thing. And the way, what I really like with Cody as well is that he is very spiritual. He has a Cherokee background, and that he knows that he has messed up big time, that he has soiled his soul, and he needs to redeem himself. So he's devoted many years now. He's working with veterans. He does it for free. He has healing centers. He does everything he can, and now he steps forward with this type of explosive information. So what have we learned? We have learned the usual suspects once again: the Bushes, the Clintons, the Saudis. It's the same, like we say so many times. But I would also like to point out that when you look at Oklahoma City, also please notice what happened to the government building in Oslo that was blown up, more or less identical. So it's they're using the same modus operandus, but just then they move it around, like we've been talking about before. It's like this global tour of terror. It's just moving around, the same players doing the same thing, like a rock band on tour, performing with the same theme, the same setup, the same actors, players. Doesn't matter if it's pedophile trafficking, drugs, weapons, assassinations, you name it. It's the same. It's the same octopus, the same head, but with tentacles out in so many different areas of our lives. So I feel honored to be with Cody. I really do, because I know, just like with Chip Tatum, the other CIA whistleblower, these guys have done horrific stuff, but they're not trying to cover it up. They take responsibility for it, and they say, I have chosen a different way. And with Cody, he was flatlining twice, and he had this out-of-body experience where he saw his body from the outside. He saw that, oh my God, something totally different is at stake here, that with these physical bodies, that's just one low-level type of life that is so much bigger. And it was there that he chose, when he came back from these two flatline experiences, he said, I am getting out of the dark. I am going to choose the light. That's why his book is called Choosing the Light. And it's fantastic, because my website is Light on Conspiracies. We're doing the exact same thing. And the first time we spoke, it was almost like with tears in our eyes, we were like brothers uniting in this transformation of the darkness. So I think you muted your microphone, Alfred, so it's easier if you unmute.
I keep on doing that so I won't pipe up and interrupt, because I'm a five-planet
interrupt there.
Our thing is that we always pipe up and interrupt with our thoughts. I just want to ask you this. Here we have the Alfred P. Murrah building, and it looks like the connections there are with the Clintons. There's some heavy connections with the Clintons, and it looks like part of what the CIA got rid of was some evidence that would have implicated the Clintons. Now, and kind of the false flag MO, the cookie cutter MO there was that they blew up the building and part of the MO was to get rid of the evidence. Boom, the 400,000 case. Now we fast forward, and it's interesting that just around that time we had the precursor activity at the World Trade Center. Remember, around 1995, 96, 97. Now let's fast forward to 2001, the false flag at the World Trade Center and at the Pentagon, where it seems that there was a PSYOP set up both at the World Trade Center and at the Pentagon. And all of this is still in investigation. I mean, I don't want to get into those facts because I know it's really complicated, and we could do 12 webinars just on the 9/11, on the technology that was due there. I mean, I remember sitting as a judge listening to the 20 witnesses. I mean, it just blows your mind. But coming down to it, the one element that is alike is that it looks like they faked a commercial airline crash into the Pentagon. That was faked. It was memes. The FBI took the films from the gas station across, took them away. No plane crash there. And they put explosives inside the Pentagon. And it was right at the unit where they were gathering all of the evidence on the $3 trillion and tremendous corruption inside the Pentagon. And all the investigators were there. So they got rid of the evidence and they got rid of the investigators. But through an explosion inside there, in other words, the black ops killed the investigators and got rid of the evidence. I mean, that is war crime. If there's ever a war crime, that's a war crime. So those are the two things. And there, it doesn't lead to the Clintons. It leads to the Bushes, the Rumsfelds. It leads to George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, because on that day, George H.W. Bush was leading a meeting of the Carlyle Group. Oh, gee, the annual meeting of the Carlyle Group. Isn't that strange? And then George W. Bush had to fly the entire bin Laden family. All the planes in North America were shut down except for one to get the bin Laden family out of North America. I mean, it's just like, it's a circus, it's a farce. So here we have the Clintons who are involved in this, Murrah building, incredible false flag. That's a war crime itself. Then we come to the false flag of the Pentagon and the World Trade Center 9/11. That's a super war crime. And we have Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton walking around, and we have George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush walking around. How do we have these four arch criminals, arch war criminals walking around? How is that? Over to you.
Well, Alfred, you're the judge, so I don't get it.
I'm saying, who is protecting them? Who is protecting them? You're the investigator. Is there any way that you can go out and take on as a research issue who is protecting Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Donald Rumsfeld, George H.W. Bush, and all the perpetrators behind the Alfred P. Murrah building and 9/11, between the World Trade Center and the Pentagon? Who's protecting these people?
But the people you mentioned here, you have to see that they're just players on a lower level, even though they look on a high level for us. But they're actually not, absolutely not in the top. They're just players, and they've got.
Yeah. So part of our work in the 9/11 tribunal was to get to the higher levels, and our tribunal is not finished. We're still an open tribunal. We were holding sessions here in Vancouver, and they demolished the theater where we were holding sessions. It doesn't exist anymore. And the videos of our sessions, they were videotaping it. Those videos have been destroyed. Okay? No, I'm telling you. So everybody understands how that's been sabotaged. Those videos were destroyed, and Architects for 9/11, which is an organization, sent their director up here to try and persuade the Vancouver 9/11 organization to sabotage the 9/11 tribunal and not to record it and not cooperate. I mean, it's like, talk about COINTELPRO. It's beyond anything. So what I would
it's standard procedure.
Yeah. So what I would like to know, and all the researchers out there, why are Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, who are arch war criminals, and George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, and Donald Rumsfeld and their associated people, who are arch war criminals, why are they walking around? Who's protecting them? And who are those people? I mean, I was charged with researching that as a